Finally, and I mean finally, by which I mean finally. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a federal judge finally refusing to impose a strict penalty on a January 6th protester. And you know why? Because he goes, whatever happened to the BLM and Antifa rioters? Why didn't the same U.S. government that is prosecuting these guys go after them? And so what the judge says, very telling, is he says, quote, the U.S. Attorney's Office would have more credibility if it were even-handed. Now, here are some details. We're talking about the case of Danielle Doyle of Oklahoma. She's accused of entering the Capitol through a broken window. She remained in the Capitol for 24 minutes. Her crime in there is, quote, yelling at police. So she's not someone who's violent in any way. She's not accused of hurting anyone or damaging any kind of property. And the U.S. government wanted to give her 2 months of home arrest and 3 years of probation. And the judge is District Judge Trevor McFadden, goes, nah, I'm not doing it. He gives her 2 months probation, $3,000 fine. She's out of here. And now, what's even more interesting than the sentence, and of course the left is like, this is a very light sentence. Let's remember the standard pattern. The standard pattern is, and I'm going to quote here from Judge James Boasberg. This is an Obama appointee. Whenever these January 6 guys come up, even if they've done nothing and walked around, took a selfie, you get this kind of rhetoric. And this is from Judge Boasberg, the Obama guy. I can't emphasize enough that the cornerstone of our democratic republic is the peaceful transfer of power after an election, blah, blah, blah. And what you and others did on January 6th was nothing less than an attempt to undermine that system of government, blah, blah, blah. So this is the kind of bloviating nonsense that we get from these frauds. But notice, by the way, Judge McFadden, I should point out, graduate of Wheaton, an evangelical college. He went to the University of Virginia School of Law, probably one of the more conservative law schools in the country. He clerked for Judge Stephen Colleton, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit, conservative judge. So this is a judge who's not going along, as in fact some Reagan and even Trump appointees have, with the left's narrative. And I want to quote some more statements from the judge. He makes the point that he says, he says, why hasn't the federal prosecutors brought more cases against those accused in the 2020 summer protests? In fact, he reads out statistics showing all these incidents of riot, arson, attacks, and so on. Certainly attempts to influence things, certainly attempts to affect official procedures, riots at courthouses, riots over Kavanaugh, nothing. And the judge basically says, listen, this woman, Danielle Doyle, was, quote, he doesn't excuse her actions. He doesn't say she was right to be in the Capitol. Not at all. In fact, he says she was acting, quote, like all those looters and rioters last year. And the judge goes on to say, that's because looters and rioters decided the law did not apply to them. So when people accuse the January 6 protesters of being, quote, above the law, that they were trying to subvert a legal process, the judge is saying, this is Judge McFadden, so were the guys on the left. They too had a disregard for law. They too refused to accept the legitimacy of law. In that sense, they too were subverting the United States as a country under the rule of law. And so I think that this brings a refreshing dose of even-handedness to the proceeding. And the left is, of course, screaming. Why are they screaming? They're screaming because finally they're actually getting blind justice. They're finally getting even-handedness, and they don't want it. They don't like it. They want justice that is not blind. They want justice that is kind of one-eyed, that basically looks away when their guys do bad stuff and then jumps to its feet when the offenses are on the other side. And clearly, Judge McFadden is having none of it. Finally, to our great relief, an honest judge.